Smashing those protein goals can be hard, but one way I start my day is with a high-protein breakfast featuring Jones Dairy Farm's chicken sausage. Jones Dairy Farm makes premium crafted meat products such as all-natural breakfast sausage, available in pork, chicken and turkey, and center-cut Canadian bacon. 100% of their products are made in the USA with materials sourced primarily from the Midwest. Jones Dairy Farm products are available at most grocery stores, including Costco, and you can find them in a store near you at jonesdairyfarm.com. Today on CityCast Houston, Mayor Whitmire has made it clear cars rule all in his administration, especially in Montrose. He's already come after a project that would make Montrose more walkable, and now he's coming after bikes. Houston Public Media's Dominic Anthony Walsh joins me to break it down. It's Tuesday, July 15th. I'm Raheel Ramzanali, and here's what Houston's talking about. Dominic, last time you were on with us, we talked about how the plans of making Montrose Boulevard more walkable were being scrapped because of Mayor Whitmire. And now his administration's mobility principles, as they call them, are coming after a proposed bike lane. What's happening?
Yeah, so in this case, we're talking about the West Alabama Street reconstruction project. This is a 1.6 mile project stretching from Shepherd Drive to Spur 527. So it goes from Upper Kirby through Montrose to Midtown, and it includes street repaving, drainage improvements, sidewalk expansion, street lighting, new traffic signals, but no bike lane. An original design concept included a bike lane that would have been achieved through narrowing the car lanes from 12 feet to 10 feet. Instead, those 3 lanes will remain their current width, which really doesn't leave room for a bike lane.
Okay, so the wider car lanes, just the width that they are right now, that's going to remain the same, right? That's a big thing with Mayor Whitmire's mobility principles. What is that? Like, is there a reason he wants wider car lanes on all of these projects?
Yeah, so if you chat with Marlene Gaffrick, who's a senior advisor to Mayor Whitmire for planning in particular, she talks about these guiding principles a lot. One of them is maintaining the number and width of car lanes. The principles also talk about improving pedestrian safety, ensuring that first responders can easily navigate streets. But obviously, the maintaining the number and width of car lanes is among the most restrictive of these principles. It's new under this administration, and in this case, it essentially prohibits anything from being done when it comes to a bike lane. There's limited space in the right of way, including the sidewalk, the buffer between the sidewalk and the street itself. If you are maintaining 12-foot lanes instead of reducing them to 10 feet, that doesn't leave you a lot of room left over for a bike lane. So, yes, this is one of the main pillars of the guiding mobility principles, and it is very restrictive. It limits the possibilities, especially for bike infrastructure.
And then because that limiting of the bike infrastructure, right, putting a dedicated lane for bikers in such an important part of the city that's connecting various parts of the town, right? As you mentioned, Upper Kirby, Midtown, of course, Montrose, and then it goes into downtown as well. This is pretty important, and this raises a big safety concern as well. In your reporting, you found that there were 15 cyclists who were seriously hurt from 2022 to 2023 because of traffic-related collisions. Has the mayor or anybody in his administration addressed this and talked about not having bike lanes could really impact safety?
Yeah, so 15 cyclists or pedestrians, that's what the numbers showed. And this is within the geographic area served by the local management board. So the last 2 years that there's complete data for, 2022 and 2023, there were 2 fatalities, 18 serious injuries as a result of traffic collisions, and the majority of those were pedestrians or cyclists. The mayor's administration says that Vision Zero is still an important priority for the administration. This is the nationwide initiative that aims to reduce traffic-related fatalities to zero. We did some reporting about how they have de-emphasized Vision Zero. They say it's no longer their like top priority. They have pushed back on the idea that it's been de-emphasized. So a little bit of back and forth there. Obviously, if you ask the administration, are you concerned about people dying on the streets? They will say yes. When it comes to data-backed projects like traffic diets, like protected bike lanes that have been shown to reduce fatalities and injuries, that's when you get some tension between the mobility principles and then what actually reduces crashes. So they say it's a priority, but the projects don't always hold it up as the top priority.
There will be bigger sidewalks, though. That is one thing to note, right? With this project, is that going to help at all with bike traffic or safety?
So we got a statement from Marlene Gaffrick, one of Whitmire's senior advisors, and she said bicyclists have the option to ride either in the car lanes or on the sidewalks. And so the sidewalks right now are typically less than 6 feet in this area. They will be extended to 6 feet as required by city code. And, the mayor's office is saying that cyclists can use the sidewalk. So we'll see how that plays out. But there is an argument there that, of course, pedestrians will have a safer, better experience on this street with the wider sidewalks. And then, cyclists and pedestrians sharing a 6-foot wide sidewalk could be complicated. But we'll see. They've said that's an option.
Yeah, and with those wider car lanes, because you mentioned that she said that, hey, bicyclists are free to use the road as well. But we know that with wider car lanes, the cars are going to go faster, right? Like there has been so much research on this. And this goes back to, again, if I'm a cyclist, do I feel safe riding my bike from Montrose to Midtown and then eventually downtown or going the opposite way? I personally don't. What are the residents saying about that?
Yeah, so I haven't chatted with any residents about this specifically, but this is a 3-lane road with a center turn lane. So a cyclist using the lane as they're allowed to do by law would also be backing up traffic behind them. And so you can imagine, drivers of cars getting frustrated, potentially trying to pass in the center turn lane. Various dangerous scenarios could arise from all of that. It's not the best option, especially compared to a protected bike lane.
Like me, you're probably looking for some good road trips to make the most out of summer. Well, let me tell you about Port Aransas. My family and I spent a weekend there, and we can't wait to go back because Port A is such a unique beach town. First, almost everybody rolls around the island in golf carts. It is so cool. Second, you can make sun-soaked memories by hanging out on the beach all day or mix it up and try your hand at some surfing or parasailing. We did that and the entire family loved it. Or you can go fishing with one of the many charters setting sail from the harbor. Port A has something for everyone, and it's an easy drive from Houston, making it a great road trip destination. One visit and you'll see why generations of Texans have anchored their traditions to the island life. Go to visitportaransas.com and plan your trip to Texas's beach. Looking for a getaway that's equal parts relaxation and adventure? Then it's time to choose your chill at Margaritaville Lake Resort, Lake Conroe, Houston. Right now, you can pick from 3 amazing offers to match your perfect escape, like stay longer and save more. That means more time to unwind and enjoy everything Margaritaville has to offer, like my favorite, hanging out by the resort-style pool with a cold drink. And if you're looking for a weekday retreat, Margaritaville Lake Resort has you covered. Book a weekday stay and score a $50 credit to use on spa treatments, dining, and more at the resort. And for our everyday heroes like nurses, teachers, first responders, and military personnel, you can relax lakeside with a special $99 heroes rate. No matter how you chill, there's a deal with your name on it. And it's all just an easy 1-hour drive north of Houston. So what are you waiting for? Head to Margaritaville Resort, LakeConroe.com and choose your chill today. I know the mayor's administration is saying a lot of things, and you've highlighted some of those so far, but for the sake of balance, like these plans being updated and scrapping the bike lanes, are there any benefits that maybe we're not talking about? Something that we're missing?
I think the big one when it comes to maintaining the width and number of car lanes, it gets traffic through the area at a faster pace. One thing that residents are excited about, a handful of residents, are the preservation of trees. This was an issue with the Montrose Boulevard project.
Mm-hmm.
The original design would have entailed, cutting down some of the trees. The new design cut down less trees. With the West Alabama project, the original design did not touch the trees at all. But once you take into account the guiding mobility principles and the inability to narrow the car lanes to accommodate for the bike lane, any bike lane would have necessarily had to eat into the buffer where trees currently are. So you kind of have to go from step A to B to C to follow the argument. But I did chat with one of the residents who's happy that this project is not touching the trees. She also did say that bike lanes should be on smaller side streets. So she had a couple perspectives there. I think that when you look at kind of all of the public feedback, especially at the open house that happened, at the ongoing management board meetings, folks want more connectivity for bike lanes and for pedestrians in this neighborhood. You think about what Montrose Boulevard would have done. It would have provided a connection for cyclists to Allen Parkway and then right past it, the Buffalo Bayou. That's like a major game changer for connectivity to the wider network of bike infrastructure. West Alabama would have been that kind of west-east connector. There's another project, the WA project. I always forget if it's WOG or WA. I think it's WA.
We'll go WA. Yeah,
We'll
I
go
think
with
everyone
WA.
says WA. Yeah.
So it has a protected bike lane right now, but it doesn't extend up to the Buffalo Bayou. That's another project that's been paused that seems unlikely to continue as planned. So there is frustration with this overall pause and reversal on increasing this area's connectivity to the broader network.
Yeah, we'll definitely talk about what's happening in Montrose and how that's impacting the rest of the city in just a second. But I want to talk about these public feedback meetings and just what the public is saying, because while this isn't like an official forum or an official place to hear feedback, the Houston subreddit posted your story, and Dominic, the comments were pretty mixed. Like one person asked, did the cycling community do something to the mayor? Is this why he's going so hard against them? And then one person flat out said that people might not like it, but the polls showed that the public didn't want to turn existing lanes into bike lanes. 54% of the people said that, hey, we don't want bike lanes, taking over the existing lanes. What's been the community reaction overall to this plan from what you're gathering?
So there hasn't been any scientific poll of this particular area of Montrose. So we don't have like the definitive answer to that. At the open house where these plans were kind of presented, community members could come in, look at the design concepts, and then leave feedback for later review. We do know that there were some protesters there with signs advocating against the plan. We've seen similar opposition in the actual management board meetings to the various changes in Montrose, including especially the Montrose Boulevard project. So there is definitely a block of community members who are not happy about these changes. There, of course, is also the group that's very concerned with the preservation of trees, who also just happen to not like bike infrastructure on major streets. When you kind of back up and look at city perceptions as a whole, like you said, it's mixed when it comes to bike lanes. I remember at a recent budget committee meeting, Rice University's Kinder Institute presented some numbers from a survey about how Houstonians want the city to spend money. The majority of Houstonians, by a good number, wanted the city to spend less on bike lanes. So that's obviously a survey that people from across the city could respond to within the localized Montrose area, where people do move there for walkability and bikeability.
Yeah.
Like you would imagine the attitude might be different. But yeah, at the city and the regional level, there are definitely mixed feelings towards bike lanes and bike infrastructure, including some level of antipathy.
I'm glad you brought up like spending. Real quickly, how much is this going to cost the city going back and scrapping these plans? Because when these were first approved, I know there were studies done. I know there was time put into it. There's money put into it. How much is this costing the city to scrap this and redo all of it?
So, a spokesperson for the local management board said that they don't have a final number on the
Mm.
redesign cost because it's ongoing. They're still accepting public comment, and there could be further work and more changes done. I did chat with a former member of the management board who was replaced by Whitmire earlier this year. He said that the additional work and the pause on this project cost more than $80,000. And this is for a project that overall is estimated to cost around $28.5 million. Dollars. That broader number, of course, could go up the longer the project is paused
Mhm.
as this design work is redone and continued. The local council member, Abby Kamen, I chatted with her about this, and that's one of the big things she was concerned about.
Dominic, I'm glad you brought up Abby Kamen, who again is the council member representing Montrose. And, city council works closely with the mayor, right? And she was very upset about this decision. And here's the actual quote, okay? I'm going to read it word for word because I don't want to skip anything. She said, "The insanity of redoing plans, wasting taxpayer dollars, redoing good plans that worked and that listened to the community," end quote. That is not holding back at all, Dominic.
Yeah, I think she also described the city's approach to infrastructure under this administration as arcane. So she's not a fan of the ongoing pauses. And we've talked about this before. The typical approach to a mayor replacing or choosing members of a local management board, in this case, the Montrose Tax Incremental Reinvestment Zone. This is the body that oversees how a portion of property tax revenue is spent in the area. Usually, when a mayor is choosing members of that board, of that management board, they do consult with the local council member. Whitmire replaced every single member of this board over the past year and change,
Mm.
and he did not consult with Kamen for any of those picks. He did consult with a former city council member, Sue Lovell, who served in an at large capacity over a decade ago. And so he's looking to someone with experience from further back in time to help guide these decisions rather than the council member who currently represents the district.
What can Abby Kamen do about this? Because it sounds like she's representing and is listening to her community. And that's why she has such strong words regarding this decision to scrap the bike lanes. What is she doing, though? What can she do?
I think it's interesting because another city council member, Julian Ramirez, during the budget process, in particular, the city's capital improvement plan process, where they kind of decide the 5 year plan for infrastructure projects, he introduced an amendment that would require the administration to update city council members when projects are changed, paused, and the amendment was tabled. It's going to go to committee, but this is something that you would imagine Cayman would be supportive of. There have been projects in her area that have been paused, that have been clawed back in some way. And so, under this amendment, we'll see how exactly it turns out. It's going to go to committee and be discussed with Waugh and West Alabama and Montrose Boulevard. It wouldn't have been this kind of vague pause that we saw about a year ago, where the plans eventually come out. Instead, the city council member would most likely have to be notified immediately. And one of the things in the amendment is there's a public hearing component. So a lot more community engagement forced into the process from the start when these projects are paused. That's the type of thing that I know council member came in wants to see more of, community engagement when it comes to these decisions. And that's one of these things that the amendment from Ramirez would require.
I'm surprised that's not already in place. Like, that just sounds like common sense government. Like, that should happen. If you're going to redo stuff, if you're going to make changes that impact a neighborhood, the least you could do is just inform the council member.
Whitmire's reaction was interesting. He said that council members can always pick up the phone and call the director of the Public Works Department. He claimed, without evidence from what I've seen, that previous mayors didn't allow council members to talk to department directors about projects. We've heard from council members that that's just not true. But setting that aside, his perspective was council members can always get updates from department directors and from the mayor's office if they just pick up the phone. Of course, what this amendment would do is require that the mayor's office start that process by informing the council member, rather than the council member kind of noticing something is being changed and then having to figure out what exactly is going on.
This episode is sponsored by Friskies, who would like to tell your cats hi. Now, if that didn't get your cat's attention, there is one thing that always does the trick. Just pour some Friskies crunchy food in the bowl and you'll hear those paws come running. Works every time. With so many Friskies choices, you can always bring your cats running from their secret napping spots. There's always more to explore. See for yourself at friskies.com or visit your local store.
This episode is brought to you by Starbucks. Smooth, bright, deliciously crafted. Introducing Starbucks Sansera Blend, their smoothest, brightest coffee yet. It's a new kind of light roast, one that's packed with so much flavor, it shines no matter how you brew it. So go ahead and try it hot, iced, black, or with a splash of creamer. Visit athome.starbucks.com/Sansera-blend-coffee to bring Starbucks Sansera Blend home.
Look, by now we've established that Mayor Whitmire and his administration, they favor cars over everything, right? With the wider car lanes, the scrapping of Montrose Boulevard, the initial plans, scrapping of this project, taking away bike lanes. There's no denying it. And they're upfront about it, right? They're talking about these guiding mobility principles, right? But his administration undoing so many projects that were approved by residents after feedback, after discussions, this has become one of the biggest stories of his administration so far, right? Should we just get used to seeing any bike lane or walkability project across Houston being scrapped for the foreseeable future? Because it looks like nobody can stop this administration and these guiding mobility principles.
Well, I think the one component that maybe they would push back on is the pedestrian piece, because pedestrian safety is in the guiding mobility principles. These projects do still include the expansion of sidewalks. Where we see the real tension is, of course, with cyclists. The mayor has made a number of comments that show some level of skepticism about the feasibility of biking for anything other than recreation. And so this idea that you'll expand bike lanes in neighborhoods for the purpose of commuting or even getting from point A to point B, your home to a restaurant, he's expressed some level of skepticism about that. And then the bigger challenge with these guiding mobility principles is that, like I said, the maintaining the width and number of car lanes is a remarkable constraint on the possibilities. That said, we have seen projects like Antoine Drive in the Northwest, where I believe the car lanes would have been maintained in their number and width, while a 10-foot shared use path was built with a buffer in between them. And for some reason, they clawed that back so that it was instead a 6-foot sidewalk. And so there are these instances where it doesn't seem like something's conflicting with the guiding mobility principles, but it's still clawed back. And so given the mayor's comments, he's said multiple times publicly that he sees biking as more of a recreational activity than anything else. There are some questions about the future of Houston's bike plan, which of course called for dramatic, significant expansion of the citywide bike network. We're seeing pieces of that fall away. And given those comments and given these guided mobility principles, it seems unlikely that the plan as it exists will come to fruition.
One of the frustrations that I hear from listeners is, hey, this is happening in Montrose, right? Like, it seems like one administration can just come in based on what Mayor Whitmire wants. He can just undo any plans that we've already talked about and change them. This doesn't sound fair. This doesn't sound like good democratic governing in that you're listening to the constituents, right? They're afraid that he's going to do that with other projects across the city in other avenues as well, not just cyclists. Do you get that from people when you're talking to them? Because there is this fear that this administration will get whatever they want.
I mean, it's a strong mayor system. Other cities have the mayor as the chief elected official, and they also have an unelected city manager who kind of oversees day-to-day operations. And Houston, the mayor is the chief executive who administers the entire city. So he's powerful. He was, of course, elected in a landslide. Polling from the Hobby School shows that he remains pretty popular. So, when it comes to the rest of the city, the bike plan is pretty extensive. It's not just Montrose and Midtown and Upper Kirby. There are components of the bike plan across the city. And so we'll see what happens where. The one kind of glimmer of hope, I think, for the cycling community is that he has expressed support for biking as a recreational activity, which you could imagine means more recreational trails potentially and good maintenance of the existing trails. So there's that. I know that that's not much consolation for folks who want to see more options in their immediate neighborhood, folks who want to be able to ride to work, to public transit, to a restaurant, to a concert. For folks in Montrose, that's just not going to happen in the immediate future unless you want to be in a car lane competing with cars or on a narrow sidewalk competing with pedestrians.
Yeah.
So I think that this administration is not the friendliest towards the cycling community, given what the cycling community wants. But of course, as we mentioned earlier, there is that question of what the majority of Houston wants. And there are wide swaths of the city that are frankly skeptical of cyclist infrastructure and do want cars to be able to drive fast. It's Houston. It's a car-centric city. We have a popular mayor, according to polling, who has a very car-centric approach. So it's definitely blow after blow after blow for the city's bike plan.
Yeah. I would love to hear from our listeners as well. So if you want to send me a voicemail at 713-489-6972, please send it and we'll play it on a future episode because I'm just curious, like, are we missing something? Are there other opinions about this that maybe could shed some light on what's happening? So please send me that voicemail and we'll play it on a future episode. And I know this is something that we're going to be talking about for a long time, Dominic. It seems like this is going to be another big thing to watch out in Mayor Whitmire's administration. So I know you'll be back on and I can't wait to talk to you again. So I appreciate you joining me on this one. And again, I'm excited to have you back on. Thank you again.
Thanks.
That was Dominic Anthony Walsh. You can check out his reporting on News 88.7 and with the link in our show notes. Hey, do me a favor and help us grow the show by sharing this episode with 3 friends who live in Montrose or love cycling around H-Town. You can also drop us a rating and review wherever you're listening right now, and please subscribe to CityCast Houston if you're new here. Want more Houston news? Check out our daily newsletter, Hey Houston, and here's a bonus tip. The newsletter has an events section with stuff to do every day in our awesome city, so definitely check that out. That will do it for today. I'm Raheel Ramzanali. Thank you for listening, and I hope you learned something new.